All right, hello. Welcome to the Artificially Intelligent Podcast, where me, Nathan Timmel, a white, hunky American crackrass comedian in Iowa, speaks with his bestest bud, a black African-American person of color in Philadelphia, a musician. I'm a comedian, he's a musician. And today we have a guest, Sheri Marouz. Did I say it correctly?
You did.
I did. I practiced it several times because how is it spelled? M-R-U-Z or
Yes, Marouz.
yeah, so
That's what you get when you marry a Polish boy from Minnesota. You get a funny last name. Mhm.
I guess, yeah, I think of the Midwest. I think of Wisconsin and Germany. So I don't think of the Polacks. So, all right, well, there you go. But Minnesota, that's not you. We originally, the reason you're here, part of it is we went to the same high school in the same small town in Wisconsin, a little
Yes.
town called Oconomowoc.
That's right.
Wow.
And
That is our connection.
Did you guys
now,
actually know each other back then or no?
I knew of Nathan, but
Oh, because he was the one
I
who
don't know
sometimes
that we
got
were connected
suspended.
at all.
Right? He was the one who was always getting marched out of the school in handcuffs. That's how you knew.
I
not
don't recall
handcuffs.
that. I don't recall that. I'm sorry, I don't recall it.
Yeah, not handcuffs, but I had let's say a reputation, or I mean, because we talked to Mike Dalton about what it's like to grow up in a small Wisconsin town and be different, or actually he was the same then, how he transformed himself from that small town mentality to the man he is today. And he said, yeah, we didn't run the same circles, but I was aware of you. I'd see you coming. I'd head the other way because, man, that Timmel's an asshole. Those were his words.
Wow, okay. I just don't remember that. I know that our town was small enough, our high school was small enough that before I aged, my memory was pretty good back in the day. You could have covered the names in the yearbook, and I could have gone through and named everybody. That's a long time ago. So I was aware of who people definitely were. I would know someone if you would have said your name. But the truth is that as I've gotten older, I don't recall everybody. There are times where someone will say, they'll mention somebody and they'll say, well, you were at the party, or, you were at this event and we were all there. And I don't necessarily remember all those details anymore, but we do come from a great town. I think I love Oconomowoc and I love all those memories, but yeah, Minnesota, I met my husband in La Crosse. So a lot of students in La Crosse
Wisconsin.
were from Minnesota.
Okay, I was gonna say because that's all, but it's funny. I want to autocorrect you on something. My graduating class was 400 plus people, and I don't remember that being small at all because I've seen graduating classes of 20, 30 or less than 100. So I thought a
Sure.
graduating class of 400 was not too bad for a small town.
Yeah, not too bad. I think I've gotten so used to what we have here in Florida, which is, I would say, just shy of insanity. When my son graduated high school in 2019, there were like 800, almost 900 kids in his graduating class.
That would
It's
be
just
double,
unbelievable. The
right?
high schools here are like college campuses. They're huge. They're just, and I think we have 4 or 5 high schools in our town. It's amazing how
All
different
right.
it is. So
You
different.
also have different memories than I do, or different perceptions, which is neat because I have not gone back to Oconomowoc. The closest I've been is I went to, and this won't mean anything to anyone, but there used to be a resort there called Olympia that was on the outskirts of town. Now it's gone, but it was fully embedded because the town grew over it. And I got there to perform comedy. I was hired, and I got there and I'm like, I could drive 5 more minutes and go look at the town, but fuck that place because I don't want to say unhappy memories, but I came from the inner city of Milwaukee. And so all of my friends were black. And when I showed up in Oconomowoc, everyone was extremely racist and nobody, except for Josh Johnson, was black. And
Right.
that literally the one black kid, and so everybody was
The
racist.
occasional
and I'm like,
foreign exchange student.
yeah. But I just remember having this thought: why does everybody hate black people when there are no black people around? I was very confused as a child, and then it took me as an adult to grow up and figure out media manipulation and what the news presented as good and bad, and how
Right.
even Hollywood movies are. Do you feel lucky? I mean, you look at Sudden Impact with Clint Eastwood, and he walks into that cafe of all black thugs. You're like, wow, this would not get made today. But either way, so I just remember it being very small town, small mind, conservative, racist, hypocritical, whereas, like, we love Jesus, just not in the biblical way, just in the way that allows us to feel good about our judgments. So it's interesting that you have happy memories. Is it because, did you grow up there, or did you move there like I did?
So I moved there. I moved there when I was 10. I lived in Ohio, and then my parents got divorced. My mom got remarried. We moved to Oconomowoc. So not all of my memories are happy, but most of them are. I had wonderful friendships there, and I had some wonderful teachers. Things at home were not fantastic. Certainly not the worst case scenario, but I was happier at school than I was at home. And I had really good friendships. I also had had a steady boyfriend in high school, which was fun. I had a great, healthy,
What's that
relationship for
like?
that time. What did you say?
I said, what's that like?
It was great, actually. It was a lot of fun, and he was a lot of fun. And we had for
Would I
young
recognize the
people.
name? I don't remember anybody.
His name was Brad Hall,
No.
and he was in the same grade as me. We actually went to elementary school, junior high, high school together. Didn't
And he
get
ended up on
together.
Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, I saw that guy recently I saw something about him recently, and I totally forgot that there was somebody famous with that same name. But I guess
I
what I mean
still
is that,
might be, but was married to Julia Louis-Dreyfus after
oh,
Saturday Night
okay.
Live. But
I didn't know. Not the same, definitely not the same guy. But we had, my friends, my boyfriend, we did a lot of fun, normal teenager stuff. So I have good memories, very good memories. And I think that I left Wisconsin in 1992, having gone to college, um, and left there. And I have a lot of, and I think this is also just kind of part of aging. I have a lot of nostalgia, and I think with Facebook and the internet, something we never saw coming when we were kids, or at least I didn't. Having these tools now to stay connected online has been really wonderful for me to stay connected with the people that I went to school with, making new connections. But I do like to go home. I started going home a couple of years ago and spending about a week in that area, and sort of retracing steps and revisiting places. And I really enjoy it. But I've talked to several people who never go home. And then you talk to people who've lived there their entire lives, they never left.
yeah,
So that's always interesting to me too. I don't know. I'm glad that I've had the opportunity to be in different places, live in different places and move around a little bit. But I do like to go back there. I think it's really pretty, and I just like to connect with people from childhood. Makes me feel good.
it's funny. You said you use Facebook to connect, and I use Facebook. I remember full well going to a high school reunion, the first one, and I'm like, well, this is kind of neat, not too bad, seeing these people after all these years. And now Facebook makes it like I don't need to go to another one. Like
Yeah.
it's funny because I get along with people because I don't care. Like I say I use these fake terms like, oh, I really hate Trumpers, but I know Trumpers and I like them and we get along. It's
Mhm.
just I have this visceral reaction when I see them posting something completely fucking idiotic online, and I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, Jesus fucking Christ. And then I see them in person and I'm like, oh, I actually like you. You're a decent person.
Oh, I know.
And
Yeah.
um so we use Facebook differently. I use it as a reason not to stay in touch. Like, okay, that's why I don't want to talk to you, even though I like talking to them. So let's start there. Do you
Mhm.
feel what you just said? I've lived a lot of places too. And what I find, and this was proven in surveys and studies, that people with less life experience tend to have a more narrow point of view when it comes to politics and religion, as they didn't interact with more people and become expanded as human beings.
Mhm.
So they tend to vote in a tendency that supports a narrow view of life and or can hurt them economically or socially. Do you feel, are you What do you remember of what I explained? Racism, conservative beliefs.
Mhm.
Do you what are your politics, and did moving a lot shape them? Do you feel you fit in more with the small town friends you
Mhm.
have, or did you go from there? Like, I'm just word
Okay.
salading, but hopefully you can
Okay.
glean what I mean.
Well, so I've definitely never been a conservative. I've always been a liberal, always, and pretty left, you know. I think that, having grown up in Oconomowoc, I have to say, as a child, I wasn't paying attention to other people's politics, wasn't thinking that way. I was your typical teenage girl who was just really into, Duran Duran and into my boyfriend and just spending time with the girls. I don't remember my parents even talking about politics. I know who they voted for. I was aware of who they voted for, just kind of peripherally, but it was never really discussed. There was definitely not the division I think that there is now. If there was, I definitely wasn't aware of it. Same thing with friends, I guess until Trump was in office, I kind of thought that everybody I knew thought the same way that I did. I know how dumb that sounds, but I really just knowing what people's backgrounds were and things, I thought everybody was quite liberal minded like I was. I was very surprised to find out how many people are conservative, and selectively conservative. Um,
Can you
because
define that? What you mean by selectively conservative?
I mean, they're selectively conservative in that there's some things that they're definitely liberal minded about, but they'll definitely vote on the conservative side. Take for example, a hotbed issue right now, abortion. I know people who are conservative voters that are going to continue voting conservatively, even though I know they're not against abortion or gay marriage. And I that's where I really call into question where people's true beliefs and where their ethics are, because then I feel like all bets are off. If you're going to vote on such for people that are going to affect such change in such a negative way for such huge groups of people, then I really question whether or not I really can be friends with some people. I have lots of friends that I have found out where they stand because of things that they post on Facebook. And I'm sure they also know where I come from because of what I've posted on Facebook. We've been able to stay friends. And when I've gotten together, like you were just talking about, you get together, like, I really do like you. But there are some people that have waved, in my opinion, waved such a freak flag. It's a true warning that I'm like, that is definitely someone I really don't want to spend time with. I don't want to be around that person. So I don't make any effort to see them. And I have unfriended people online because I just don't want their toxicity in my life. And there I definitely don't want to be like throwing names around on here, but there is one person that I know you and I both know on Facebook that flat earther and the whole thing, it's so insane and he's so intense that I just removed him a couple of years ago because his thought processes are so insane to me, but he actually seems mentally unstable and I don't want that in my life. So
What's funny is I went to dinner with this goes back a handful of years. Several people on the conservative side of things from our town. We were seeing different seats, but we were all going to the same concert. And so we realized it and said, well, we haven't seen each other since the reunion. Let's meet for dinner and then we'll all. And he came up, and even the people on the conservative side were like, yeah, no, he's fucking Looney Tunes.
yeah, that's
We
not
keep him.
conservative. It's like he's in a class by himself. It's
To
really is
anybody
strange.
watching / listening, my favorite part about this person is whenever he goes off on one of his rants, 90% of the time I ignore him, but 10% of the time I just leave a post saying, oh yeah, I guess that's what someone that has been arrested multiple times, including for domestic abuse, would think. And he just goes off because he has this
Mhm.
huge arrest record, including for domestic abuse. And
Yeah.
he calls me a loser and a failure, and I'm like, I might be a loser, but I don't have an arrest record for domestic
I
abuse.
Right. Yeah, it's
Let
really
me
a strange situation.
let me ask you both a question because maybe you guys know the answer to this. Why do you think people would vote not counter to their own interests, but counter to their own beliefs? Like, what is it that ties the conservative vote together, even when people disagree on they seem to disagree on major issues that don't have an effect on their lives, right? Like, if you don't have any gay people in your family and in your friend group, but you believe gay marriage is okay, you could theoretically still vote against it because it doesn't affect you, right? So,
Mhm.
what is it that you think that the Conservative Party is offering them that makes it convenient for them to vote for them, even though they disagree on all these other topics?
I have a couple ideas, and we're not going to name names because I'll just use the name Fred because I can't think of anybody named Fred. But I
You're
have a
gonna
really good
make
high
them
school
like
friend named Fred.
Karens,
What's
Karens
that?
and Freds. You're gonna alienate every Karen and every Fred. But
Well,
continue.
to be fair, fuck Freds. They have it coming.
There you go.
Anyway, my good friend Fred, he's dumb. Let's just put it that way. He's dumb. I love him. God bless him. He's dumb. When we've spoken in person and he doesn't have Google in front of him, I've cornered him multiple times where we'll just have a casual conversation. I'll say, "Hey, why did you think of this?" Like, "Well, this." I'm like, "Okay, but this is the truth." Like, "Oh, I don't know, man. I just vote whatever." And then it's just done because he realizes he doesn't have an out. And one day we were talking and chatting, and I brought up the whole Ukraine phone call with Trump, where he, in everyone with an IQ above 80's eyeballs, I don't know what the word is, blackmailed them, held them hostage, said, you don't get, the quid pro quo. And that was the big thing. You do this for me, I do this for you, which is not how government works. That's how the mafia works. Um, and he legit said, I don't know, man, I just don't trust the Democrats the way they were trying to pin all that bullshit on Trump for his Ukraine phone call. And I'm like, you mean the legit phone call that was recorded and turned in by a highly decorated military officer and who everyone says that's not? He's like, yeah, Democrats tried to impeach him for that, man. I just don't trust them. They're just in it for power. So they look at everything the Republican Party did under Trump, and it's just, and then the instant the Democrats try and, I don't want to say fight back, it's literally, oh, Democrats are so corrupt. And it's just a mindset. And I
Mhm.
do not know how you break it other than move different places, experience other cultures, meet different people, expand your horizons. These people, and this is something I said was studied, most Trump voters never moved beyond a 50-mile radius of where they were born or grew up, was the survey that was shown. And so when you live in isolation, you have isolated thoughts, you don't glean information or outside experiences, and so you just don't care. You
Yeah.
think what you think, you believe what you believe, and you turn on your news, which is an echo chamber, and everybody you talk to says the same thing. So
Mhm.
so like Sheri said, in a way, she said she had no idea people felt differently from her, not because she was ignorant, just because it didn't come up. Now
Yeah.
it comes up all the time. And
All the time, it's there's so much. It seems like we debate every single thing now. I mean, people are at war over Disney, over a
yeah,
mouse. I mean, you can politicize and divide over anything these days. People used to joke, that one person could say the sky is blue and somebody else is going to say no, it's not. But nowadays that's true. People will argue over anything. I don't like the divisiveness at all. I guess, it sounds really cliche and trite, but just you do you, I'll do me. I saw a video this week of a woman that was going on about abortion and the religious um infiltration into the government, and there's just no separation of church and state anymore. And she just kept going on, and she just kept saying, I don't care. And I related so much because that's exactly how I feel. I don't care at all about anyone's conservative beliefs or their religion. I'll fight for them to have those rights themselves. They can think and say whatever they want. They have that freedom of speech. They can believe anything they want to believe, but they don't have any right whatsoever to project that on me. They don't. I don't have to believe what you believe. I don't have to do what you want me to do. I will follow law. But this whole issue with with abortion, I if you want to have an abortion, have an abortion. If you don't want to have an abortion, don't have one. If you want to take birth control, take birth control. I am not going to tell anybody what to do with their body, including whether or not they want to terminate the body, the life that's growing inside of them. That is their right to do that. If there are consequences to that, then they'll be the ones to face the music. They get to make that choice for themselves. Um, I think a lot of the thought process with people who vote conservative, they're very boxed in, and it's almost like it's a fear thing. If I give a little bit, then things are going to change around me. I know people who are 100% against gay marriage, 100% against anything transgender. It's so foreign to them, and they're so caught up in their own religious beliefs. They just don't want to see it. They don't think that this should be going on. And I just always ask myself, how does it affect them? Like, just mind your own damn business. It doesn't have anything to do with your daily life, getting up, making your breakfast, brushing your teeth, going to work, coming home, being with your family. How does Bob and Bill across the street, how does that affect your life? It doesn't have anything to do with you, or anyone who's transgender or anything. How does it affect you? It doesn't. Just stay out of it. You can close your eyes to it if you don't want to see it. Just ignore it, I guess. But you don't have to participate in other people's choices. Just leave people alone. All of this really comes down to control and power. That's what I think it is people don't want to give up their control and power. And listen, I'm married to a white man, love my husband. So this isn't a knock on all white men, but this is a white male issue. The power and control issues in the country are about white males losing power. They see that happening. And that's why I think that they're fearful of having their status or their position, their power diminished. And so that's why we have men making decisions for women. It's really crazy. It's really crazy to me. I don't think it's going to stop at abortion and birth control. I think it's going to go further. I think we'll see interference with gay marriage. I think that'll be the next thing that comes.
Well, I think a lot of it also has to do, I mean, with fear, but also, as we've said, an inability to expand your horizons. It comes down to the argument I hear a lot is protect the kids. And I love it when I see someone articulate something in a way that was in my brain, but I could never pour out of my mouth. And I saw a TikTok yesterday where it was a stitch where one person said something and then another person jumped in with the response. And the first video was this lady like, "You're telling me we have to have conversations with my 10-year-old kid about bathrooms and transgender? How are we going to do that?" And then this other mom piped in and, "Hey, sweetie, you know that bathroom in our house that all four of us use? Yeah, the bathroom in the Target's like that too. Everybody uses it." That seemed pretty fucking easy. And it was just, like, there you go. Something
that's just
I
it, is that
never
it's
thought
actually
to have compared it to a home bathroom where, yeah, we don't have mommy's bathroom and daddy's bathroom and my daughter's bathroom. It's like everybody just goes to the bathroom and you lock the door and no one cares.
It really is that simple. I mean, even even when you go into a public bathroom that has shared stalls, who cares? I've been in bathrooms
stalls,
in
two
Europe.
people pooping in the same stall. That one I'm against. That sounds very military.
We have to draw the
That's
line somewhere.
But
I've been in Europe.
One of the reasons, main reason I did not join the military is I saw Full Metal Jacket and those row of toilet paper, those row of toilets all lined up. I'm like, you're telling me I'm going to be taking a shit with guys brushing their teeth and nope, I am out.
Yeah.
That public pooping was one reason I did not join the military.
Shared
stalls, no thanks. That's right. Transgender people with the bathroom straight, yep, but shared stalls, nope.
Yeah.
I know you meant something else, but that's what jumped out at me.
I've actually been in a couple of restrooms in Europe where men and women did go to the bathroom together. It was
Ally
like
McBeal.
a mixed bath. It was just a public bathroom, and you went in and there could be a man in the stall next to you. There were no urinals, like where they go right there, but there were stalls and there were men and women. I mean, I don't know. I just don't see that it's really that big of a deal.
Like I said, Ally McBeal was groundbreaking. We should all hail Callista Flockhart. Well,
yeah.
let's use this to transition to something more personal and tragic. What Barrett and I talk about, and as we talk about some of these people, as we label them, these people, Barrett and I talk about irredeemability often, and we can never figure it out because both sides tend to look at the other as irredeemable. And I don't know that it was always this way, where we cross arms and say, well, this person doesn't think like I do, so fuck them. They're not as good as me. And everybody collectively needs to get over this. And you had a great tragedy in your life where I would say someone in my mind would be irredeemable. Fuck that person. And I know we're shifting off politics, but it's the idea of just you found forgiveness. Is something you're comfortable with talking about now as sort of the reason Dalton hooked us up, I believe.
Sure. Yeah. What do you want to know?
I mean, I guess in your words, what you're comfortable talking about and yeah, how you overcame. I guess to begin, my question would be, do you label yourself? And if so, would you call yourself a survivor or a victim? Because in today's politically correct word, calling someone the wrong thing makes me an aggressor. And I never know what the right thing is.
Okay.
I can see both. I can see both sides of things where you are a victim that becomes a survivor. I have no idea.
Oh, definitely both. I would say that it's okay to be both. So yeah, I would say that I was a victim of sexual assault. I was kidnapped in 1991 when I was going to school in La Crosse. I was walking home from work in the middle of the night, and I was kidnapped, and I was held hostage for several hours, and I was raped repeatedly. And I at one point thought I thought the person who took me was going to take me somewhere to kill me, because he had taken me to his home and then he put me back in the car, and I was sure that he was going to take me somewhere and kill me. He had told me several times that he was going to do that. Through the ordeal, I stayed very calm, and I had helped to keep him calm. And so those threats became less and less. But then when it ramped kind of up again when he put me in the car. So I was sure he was going to kill me, but he ended up driving around and taking me back to his house. And then all the rape stuff happened again. And so finally, hours later, I was released. I convinced him that I would not tell anyone what happened, and that I was just ashamed of what happened and embarrassed and humiliated, and I would just never tell anyone. So he didn't have anything to worry about. Plus, he thought I didn't see anything because he pulled my coat up over my head. Anyhow, he trusted that I wasn't going to tell anybody, and he let me go. And then I immediately went to the police. So I lied.
Good on you.
Yeah. So my husband was my boyfriend at the time. He came and got me. We went to the hospital. The police came, and I went through all of that. Long story short, he was caught, and he was sentenced to 65 years in prison. And that's a whole nother topic about, I'd love to talk sometime about sentencing and how people serve and all of that. So
we can talk about it now. I'll just jump in and say, this is where I am. We're going to get to forgiveness. I am absolutely pro death penalty, and stories like this are why. I mean, this is where I don't find forgiveness, where it's like, oh, you're absolutely guilty. Fuck you, get off my planet.
Yes. Well, I was in that space. I was definitely in that space. 30 years ago, I was. When this person was caught, I'll just say his name is David Roberts. When David was caught, I I won. At that point, I was no longer scared. I felt very empowered. So that's going back to your question. I was a victim of sexual assault, but I also survived. And so I have no shame in tooting my own horn about this, because I am proud of what I was able to do. I I fought a lot in over the years with guilt and shame of not physically fighting back when this happened. Um, I know you don't remember me from high school, but I can tell you that from a young age all the way up through high school and in college, I was definitely a person who did fight authority. I wasn't in trouble, but I definitely questioned authority, and that started in the home. I fought going to church. I ended up and not going to church because from a very young age, I questioned everything, and that wasn't appreciated. I did have some run-ins with a couple of teachers, so me having conflict or addressing conflict was never a problem for me. I had, unfortunately, I had run-ins with a couple people in high school, and I never cowered. I didn't go looking for conflict, but I definitely didn't run away from it. I would fight back if I thought something was unfair, especially for people who needed someone to stand up for them. People with developmental disabilities. I mean, that was big back when we were in high school. People picked on them terribly. And I stood up, against that many, many times. So fighting back was never an issue for me. And then this happens to me. And I'm telling you, I had the hardest time grappling with the fact that I did not physically fight back. I was taken by such surprise when this happened. I didn't see the guy, I didn't know he was going to just all of a sudden appear in front of me, and he did. So I had a really hard time. But when I reflect on what happened, I did fight back, but I fought with my brain, the whole time that I was being assaulted. I kind of, and it's hard to explain because things happen so fast in your brain. It can be milliseconds that you're having thoughts. I mean, I'm laying there and this horrible thing is happening to me. And I'm thinking about all the people in my life. I'm thinking about my parents and my siblings, and I'm thinking about my boyfriend and how I'm going to die. This is how I'm going to go out. And when I'm found, it's going to kill them. Like, I'll be dead, but it's going to literally kill my parents. My boyfriend will never forgive himself, for not coming to pick me up that night. That's what's going through my head. I'm thinking there's got to be a way I can get through this. And funny enough, I used to watch Unsolved Mysteries, and there had been this program one night on Unsolved Mysteries about a woman who had been attacked, raped, kept in a van, and she kept the guy calm. He was very violent, and she calmed him down, and he fell asleep, and that's how she got out of the van. And that was playing in my head too when this was all happening. Like, there's got to be a way I can get him to calm down. And so I just talked to him. I started talking to him and calmed him down, and he untied me. And so while I was being raped, I started pulling hair out of my head, and I had really long hair, and I took strands of my hair and put them under the pillow, and I dropped them behind the nightstand. And then I asked to go to the bathroom, and he let
Sorry,
me.
interrupt. Are you the smartest fucking person on the planet? My
Well,
God.
I don't know.
The
Thank you. I don't know that I
foresight.
am. But it is weird what happens when you're in this extremely stressful situation. It was twofold. I thought, well, if I get out of this, there's got to be evidence left. But if I don't get out of this, that could be equally important. Like, I don't know if they'll ever catch him, but if they catch him, then someone will know that I was here. So I'm going to leave evidence that I was here. I went to the bathroom. I pulled pubic hair out, put it behind the toilet seat. He got me water. I asked him for water. He got me a glass of water. I put my fingerprints on the glass. I'm thinking all of this is just going really fast, and I'm just thinking, thinking, thinking. I remember pulling carpet strands out and trying to put them in my pocket, which didn't work. But just all these things and taking in every little thing I could visually. So anyhow, he got caught. I told the police everything. They actually were able to find the house that was a big process, but they found the house. He got nailed. We went to court. Um, I
Sorry to interrupt.
mhm,
Between the caught and court, was he ever out on bail, or did they say, all right,
no,
this guy, okay, good.
no, he never, they arrested him. It would have been like the next night. I think I went to the hospital around like 7 in the morning. And I want to say they caught him around maybe, I don't know, like 11 or 12 that night. It was very late at night. I had driven around. This was terrible. I was not able to go home and take a shower or brush my teeth or anything. They immediately took me from the hospital after I had my exam and gave all my statements to the police. The police took me in a car and drove me around La Crosse trying to find this house. I could see out of my jacket. He pulled my jacket up over my head and zipped it up, and I could see out of a little spot like this big. So he didn't think I could see anything, and it was dark. So all I saw was a little bit of the house and a vehicle parked in the driveway, a Ford truck. And then I know we went up a couple of cement steps, and the door was white, and it was one of those metal doors that has like scalloping around the screen, and there's a black handle, and there was a snow shovel next to it. So that's what I told the police. And so they had law enforcement from all over Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin. They called in all kinds of help, and people were scouring La Crosse looking for this. So they're taking me, who has been through this incredible ordeal, and I'm exhausted and upset, and I want to shower and I want to wash my mouth out with bleach. And they have me driving around with them going to look at houses. And we would get to houses and they would look anything like what I described. They'd be brown. That was it. Anyhow, I was fried after getting pulled in a million different directions. I finally really lost it in the car. I was screaming on the CB radio that the house wasn't baby shit brown, it wasn't light brown. It was the color of a Nestle Toll House morsel. That's what I said on the thing. Stop calling me to places that aren't the right. Anyhow, the police were like, she's had enough. Let's take her home. So I went home. I finally showered. I did wash my mouth out with Clorox. My
Which
boyfriend's.
probably immunized you against COVID all these years
That's
later.
right. So I've never had COVID. You've got it. You nailed it. So my husband, my boyfriend at the time, now my husband, he took me to his parents' house, who lived in La Crosse, and I was exhausted. I don't even know how to describe how I felt. I was so, like, I couldn't believe that I survived what I survived, but then I kind of felt like I just kind of didn't want to be around. I wanted to go to sleep and wake up in 20 years. I couldn't believe what I had still had coming, and whether they were going to catch him or not was in my head. So eventually that night, my mother-in-law gave me a sleeping pill, and I had never taken a sleeping pill before. And that knocked my ass out. That's what I wanted. I just wanted to disconnect and go to sleep. So I went to sleep. And then the next thing I know, my boyfriend is waking me up to tell me that the DA is on the phone, and the police, they want me to come back into town, because they think that they have found the house. And I felt like I thought I had been sleeping for hours and hours and hours. And I said, where am I? I was so discombobulated. How long have I been asleep? And my boyfriend said, only 45 minutes. It was horrifying that I took this pill and then I had to go. I said, I swear I'll kill somebody. If I get down there and they take me to another house that isn't the house, I'm going to kill someone. But we went down, I met the DA, and then I met with a detective, and he said, I had been with him earlier in the day, and he said, Sheri, wouldn't do this to you if we weren't 100% sure. We are sure that we found it. And he said the crazy thing is when we were in the car earlier today, the last time that we got pulled away to go look at another house, if we had just stayed where we were, this house is on the next block over. So yeah, I know, we were that close. It was crazy that there was something instinctual I don't know how to explain this. I know it sounds a little nutty, but I knew that I was on the south side of La Crosse, and I never saw anything because the assault started in the car. And I never saw where we went, but I just knew that's where we were, and that's where I wanted them to focus, and that is where the house was. So he took me and he said, "We're going to drive down a couple of streets. I can't tell you where it's at. You have to, that's leading a witness. You have to point it out yourself." So it's night now, and that's when I was assaulted, was at night. So everything looked like it did the night before. And we drove around and we went down this one street, and I saw the house, and there was the dark brown house, and there was the truck in the parking lot, and the vehicle that I had been in, which I wasn't sure what it was, but I knew it was maroon. There it was. There was the snow shovel. There was the door. I mean, it was definitely it. And I pointed it out, and then he went and dropped me off to some other police, and then they took me home, and they went and arrested him. So it wasn't long. It didn't take long for them to find him. They only found him because of me. I mean, it's because of what I was able to tell them that they found him. And I'm very proud of that. I'm glad I took him off the street. But at that time, I was extremely angry. And I wanted him to go to jail forever. Really, what I wanted was for them to maybe just leave me alone in the room with him for a while, because I wasn't scared anymore. And I felt like I wanted to physically harm him, or let my dad go in the room with him or my boyfriend go in the room with him. Somebody just tear the shit out of this guy. That's what I wanted. I was extremely angry at that time. Went to court. We had to do a preliminary hearing. They told me I would be on the stand for 20 to 30 minutes. I was on the stand for 4.5 hours. It went way beyond the scope of a normal preliminary hearing. I really don't know why. I'm not sure, but in the end, that was a good thing, because it really proved to the defense that I was a strong witness. Like, there was no gray area here. This was a black and white situation. I was kidnapped, and I was kept hostage, and I was raped. End of story. There was no, she did this or whatever. There was none of that. The police were great. They did great police work. The attorneys did an unusual thing. When it came time to charge him, they charged him, one, as a repeat offender. He had never done anything like this before, but he had been kicked out of the army for selling or buying drugs. So I was surprised, but that could be used against him.
Because I
So that
started an
he,
eye roll when you said repeat offender. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ. And then when you followed it
no,
up with this is the first, I mean,
right. Well, it was shocking to me too, because that's exactly what I thought, is that he had done this before. But that's not it. They used this other charge against him. That was one thing they did. Then the other thing they did is they charged him with multiple counts of sexual assault, because it started in the car, and then it was in the living room, then it was in the bedroom, then it was in the living room, then it was in the bedroom, then it was in the car. It was so sorry to be so graphic, but they
right.
basically said, how many times do you think he entered you and came out and went in again? And I said, my God, I mean, he made me change positions. I don't know how many times, in rooms, and all these different things, and things I never would have done. It was horrifying. It had to be 50 or 60 times. And so they basically took that and they charged him with multiple counts of sexual assault, and the judge allowed it. So he was facing 316 years in prison, and he took a plea, which they came to me first. I will say that I gotta hand it. I know it's not always like this. In fact, it's usually not like this. But in my case, the law enforcement and the judicial system treated me very well. They gave me a lot of control. So when the DA came to me, she said, we can go to trial, and you are a very strong witness, and this is pretty much a clear cut case. But we have to give you all the scenarios and make you understand that there are times that things happen when you go to court that you weren't expecting. And that's, you having to go through the whole thing again, like you did before on the stand, but we know you can handle that. But sometimes there's a technicality that we don't see coming, in case you can lose a case over a technicality. So you think about it and whether or not you want to go, you know, through a trial. If you want to, we'll do that. Even though technically it's the state versus David Roberts, right? It's their case, which is such BS, but I know that's how it is. They let me be in the driver's seat. And they came to me and they said, he's willing to plead guilty to crimes that add up to 70 years in prison. So I gave it some thought and I decided
I apologize to interrupt, but I don't. How old was he at the time?
I was 21 and he was 23.
So, okay. So yeah, he wouldn't be out till he was 80 if without, okay. Sorry. Go continue.
Yeah.
I apologize.
No, that's okay. So I decided that that's what I would do is or that we would do is that I would allow him to take a plea and then we wouldn't have to go to trial. So in my mind, because I'm young and I'm ignorant, I'm thinking he'll spend 70 years in prison, right? That's what I think. And then we go to sentencing and there's something that I didn't tell you, and that's that earlier in the night that he got me, he tried to kidnap a girl named Nicole. And she was with friends and kind of got separated from her friends walking in an alley in La Crosse at bar time, after bar. So he saw her and he waited for her friends to get ahead of her and he tried to take her. She screamed and her friends came running back. And then two guys that heard all the commotion that they didn't know came running and then they chased him and he drove away. They reported that to the police. So she was so freaked out when she found out what happened to me and she really had like a major breakdown. She did not come to court. She just she couldn't do it. I know we knew mutual people and they said she feels bad because she knows you want her there, but she just can't handle what happened to you and knowing that it could have happened to her. So she didn't come. So the judge sentenced him to 65 years instead of 70 because 5 of the years were supposed to be for her attempted kidnapping. But she didn't come and give a statement. Anyhow,
again, you made me wince when you said 65 and then you told that story. I honestly thought you were saying, so the judge said 20 years or 5, and I was about to get angry, but okay.
Yeah. No, it really played out. I learned so much about the judicial system and incarceration through this process. So he gets 65 years. Then I have what they call a pre-sentencing. So I'm doing this out of order. There was a pre-sentence investigation where like a parole officer came to my apartment and talked to me, and they took a statement from me. And then that guy told me that I should just get used to the idea that he is never going to serve 65 years. He said in Wisconsin, mandatory release is at 75%. So whatever 75% of 65 years is, he would never serve a day longer than that. So I'm thinking, what's the sentencing for then? Like, why do you even sentence a certain amount of years if mandatory release is at 75%? And he said what he'll probably do is serve at the most 25% of his sentence. 25%. And I was irate. I'm like, that's completely crazy. And basically what he was trying to tell me was, this is my job. This is what I do. This is what I see. This is normal. He'll probably do 5 to 8 years and get out of prison. So in my head going forward after this in my life, those were kind of the numbers that I was expecting. I wasn't happy about it, but that's what I thought. The years started ticking by and occasionally I would get a letter from the state that would tell me he was going to have a parole hearing. And I just filed everything away. I kept thinking they're not going to let him out. He's going to serve longer. And that was my way of just dealing with choosing to believe that they just wouldn't let him out that early. And then, I mean, the years just rack up, right? I mean, just life just happens. And I kept getting these letters. And in 2018, I got a letter saying that he was going to have a hearing. And I don't know why it sat on my coffee table for several days before I, took it upstairs and put it in the file. But I kept looking at it and I thought, how do I feel about him if he got out? How do I feel about it? I know nothing about him or what he's been doing or how he's been or anything, but he's been in there and he's been in there longer than 25%. He's been in there longer than that, like 10 years longer than that. So I had a friend who worked for the parole and probation department in La Crosse, and she looked into his file for me, and she said he's never done sex offender treatment. He hasn't done the mandatory AODA, alcohol and drug treatment. He hasn't done any of that. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, what a dumb shit. I guess he just wants to spend the rest of his life in prison. Okay. Right. But then that letter in 2018 really got me thinking. And I called like victim services in Madison, Wisconsin, and I talked to this woman. And she said, you can go to a hearing at any time. You have every right to be present at a hearing. But the thought of being in the same room.
Are you allowed to speak at a hearing? I've never been, I mean, to give, I've seen movies because I'm dumb,
Right.
where you go and they say like, oh, he's a model citizen. And you say, this is what happened to me. And the parole board goes, yeah, fuck him. He's not getting out. So is there a difference between being present and actually speaking, or?
Yeah, so you can speak. And every time I got a letter, it came with this little card that you could fill out. It gives you like 3 lines, which is crazy if you want to have any input. I never even filled one of those out. I don't know what. I just wasn't really interested in being part of the process. I think that I was just trying to convince myself for many years that he just wasn't going to get out. And so if I just don't look at this, if I don't pay attention, don't get involved, then he'll just stay there. And then, it started to click that I really better brace myself for the fact that this guy is going to be out on the street again someday. They're not going to keep him forever. But curiosity had me like, why is he still in there? Because this isn't normal. I'm not saying it's not right, because in my mind, everybody who commits a rape should get 100 years in jail. That should be their sentence. Now we'll talk about what they actually serve in a moment, but I feel like it should never be small. It should always be this massive amount of time that they are facing, and what they do with that time is key. So I called and I said, I don't think I can be in the same room as him. I'm scared. I was scared. I was really nervous. She said, just do it over the phone, and then you can hang up if you don't want to be on the call anymore. So I did that. I thought, well, that will give me a good idea, because my only experience, Nathan, was what I saw on TV too, right? That's what do I know about a parole hearing? I've never been to anything like that. So I went on the phone and they did this. Commissioner is on the phone and the victim witness coordinator is on the phone, and then me. And the commissioner kind of talked to me for about 10 minutes and he told me a little bit about his job and what he would be doing. And he prepared me. He said, I've never met Mr. Roberts before. I've never, of course, talked to you before. So, you need to be prepared, because when I do this, when I meet with a prisoner for the first time, we go back to like childhood. I want to know their entire history. I want to know everything about that person that I can glean from them, not just reading the file. And I want to know about the crime. I want them to tell me about the crime. Are you going to be able to listen to that? And I said, well, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know what my expectations are today. I've never done this. He said, well, you will be muted, but you can unmute yourself at the end if you want to talk. I will ask you if you want to say anything, but you're not allowed to converse with him. You can make a statement, but you can't talk with him. I said, okay. So they go get him and they bring him in and they do this formal, it's this date, it's this time, prisoner number, blah, blah, blah. Present are these people. And he says, Mr. Roberts, we know you're very upset. You didn't know that the victim was going to be on the phone, was going to participate in the meeting, but you understand that she has the right to be here. And he started to speak, and it was the first time that I'd heard his voice, since 1991. And so I have to tell you that I went into this meeting with, I don't know what kind of expectations. But I do know that I was like hanging on every word because I'm listening to this voice and it sounded so different to me. When he spoke, he was definitely emotional and upset because he was so taken off guard by the fact that I was there, or not there, but on the call. And I took some joy in that. I was happy that he was upset. I was happy that he was thrown off kilter. I felt like, it was a little punitive. And I was also a little surprised by that, because the one thing I knew when I first inquired about being a participant in the meeting was that I wasn't sure how I felt anymore. I only knew that I wasn't really angry anymore. So the meeting proceeds, and it was 2.5 hours long. The commissioner asked him, he had David go through talking about everything from the time he was a little kid all the way up through adulthood. Now, I consider myself a pretty intelligent person, and I think I'm a good read on character. I'm listening to this person who's incredibly eloquent when he speaks, well educated, just really well spoken and calm, and talking about things. There was no, poor me, I went through this, my childhood was terrible. His childhood was terrible. I will tell you, his life was really not great at all. But there are no excuses for bad behavior. There really isn't an excuse. But as I listened to him talk, and he said some incredible things, I was kind of in awe of his story and having a better understanding of who he was. To me, he was always a monster. He was a rapist. He was the boogeyman. Most of the women I've met who have been raped were raped by someone that they knew. Acquaintance rape, date rape, assault within the family, all of those things are horrible. And none of this is a pissing contest over whose story is worse than anybody else's. In fact, I think that if I was really pressed about that, I would say that I would think that that would be even worse because of the betrayal, of knowing someone and trusting someone. In my situation, this was a stranger. So I could, in my mind, I could create any story I wanted to about him. And I had done that. I was sure that he was a serial rapist. No one knew, but that nobody knew. I thought he was an abusive husband to his wife. I just thought he was a monster, the kind of person that I was always warned about, right? Takes you right off the street. And that is what happened to me. So it was a lot easier to believe that he just wasn't human. Listening to him talk and listening to his story, it became very apparent to me that he was human. He was a human being. He did an absolutely horrific, terrible thing. But it was something that was spontaneous, and it was something that wasn't really planned. He hadn't done this before. He wasn't abusive to his wife, all of which, everything about his wife was definitely something I had later checked out and was proven. There was no history of violence in this person's life before that night. There was alcohol abuse, substance abuse. He was intoxicated. None of that excuses what he did, but it helped me put pieces together. There was kind of an explanation for me of who he was and what led up to that night and what led up to those circumstances. He doesn't get a free pass. He deserved to go to prison. I am not at all disappointed that he was found, prosecuted, and that he served time. But what became really apparent to me on the phone was that I knew that I had changed over the years. I had gotten older and my anger wasn't there anymore. I wasn't angry anymore. And I don't know when that left, because anger is definitely a motivator. It got me through the first few years and it got me through court, but it also is something that can really be destructive. And I was hanging on to that for a really long time. So I was glad to know that I wasn't feeling that way. On the call, he went through all of that, and then he was asked to talk about what happened that night. I need water. 1 second.
Understandable. I mean, you were telling one hell of a goddamn story. So
so he talked about what happened, but all of a sudden he's not talking very clearly. He's not talking very loudly. It's kind of mumbled. And the man on the phone, the commissioner said, "No, David, you spoke before and we could understand you. We can't understand you now. Speak up." So it wasn't like being a dick to him, but he really was keeping him on task. He said, "You need to speak so that everyone, including Sheri, can hear you." So he did. And he started talking about that night. And he went back to earlier in the evening when he was in a bar with his friends. And, he had been sober for a while and he had had this massive fight with his wife. And so he went drinking with his buddies. And then he told the story about trying to get Nicole, and how she got away. And then how, when he saw me, that he got me. And he went through the entire story. And what was so shocking was that he told the story that I had told in court, and many times in other situations where I had told the story, and all the gory details. And the only two people that really knew that story were him and I, and he didn't leave anything out. There was no excuses made. He just said what he did, and he was really full of shame and really full of guilt. And I could hear that. I could really hear that he had obviously done a lot of work over the years that he's been in prison. He's had a lot of time to do nothing else, right? But think and do work. And I learned on that call that the reason why he hadn't done AODA work, or technically the official training that he was supposed to do, and that he hadn't done sex offender treatment, was because he was always low man on the totem pole when he was incarcerated. What I mean by that is he was given this big 65-year sentence, which for a rapist is unheard of. It shouldn't be, but it's unheard of. It's unprecedented, really. So when you're in the system, you are put in a certain prison based on the sentence that you have, the crime that you committed, the time that you've already served. And then you might move around from maximum to medium to, minimum. All of that happens. But certain facilities have that training and many facilities don't. So you have to first be in one where that is offered. And he never was, because the other rapists got 8 to 10 years, right? So they are prioritized because they're going to get out sooner to get that training. So they're put in the facilities where it's offered. David was never put in a facility where it was offered. So he couldn't do it. So on his own, he did a lot of therapy and had counselors and different programs. Whatever was offered where he was, he did it. Anger management, cognitive behavioral therapy. He did do AODA. It just wasn't the official program that he was supposed to have. So he definitely did tons of soul searching and tons of work, while he was in prison. And it was very apparent on that call. What happened on that call was absolutely stunning to me. I mean, like I said many times, I didn't know what my expectations were, but I can tell you that I never in a million years would have thought that on that call, I would have found myself having compassion for the person who raped me. Never. And if somebody would have told me that, I would have told them that they're completely crazy, that they're totally nuts. If someone would have said that I would have found myself on the path to forgiveness, again, I would think that they were nuts. I mean, and many times over the years, I had people tell me, well, you just got to find a way to forgive them. And it pissed me off. It would anger me that someone would tell me what I should be doing and what I should be feeling. Was never a goal of mine, ever, to forgive this person. So on that call, I was shocked. I was utterly shocked at the way that I was feeling and what I was feeling for this person. I couldn't even reconcile what was going on. I was so surprised by it. And I wasn't being snowed. I mean, I know I sound defensive, but I wasn't having the wool pulled over my eyes. This was genuine, authentic remorse and shame. He was so incredibly ashamed over what he had done. He made a statement on that call where he said that he knew that when he died, and he knew that his headstone would only say one thing, and that was that he was a rapist. And I don't know why that struck me so much, but it really did. And it was a heartbreaking statement to me, because I know when I was on the call, I was thinking, this is somebody's son. And I'm a mom. I have a son who's 21 now, almost 22. So it's a couple of years ago. And I remember thinking on that call, David Roberts is somebody's son. And no matter what your kids do, even something heinous like that, you don't stop loving them. And I knew that his mom had stuck by him all these years. Nobody else really did, apparently, but his mom did. And she would visit him in prison and drive hours and hours and hours to go and see him. And she's elderly, and sick. And so I remember thinking to myself, when is enough enough? Like, how long should he serve now? These are the questions that popped up on that call. How long is long enough? I now know 100 years is not what I'm looking for. If I was hearing from a person who took absolutely no responsibility for what they did, they weren't accountable for what they did, no remorse, I would be like, rotten hell. I mean, go ahead and stay there till the day you die. I don't care. But that's not who we were dealing with. And it became very apparent to me that he is a human being. It's so much easier to say that he's a monster because of what he did. What he did was monstrous. His behavior was monstrous. It was incredibly impactful on me and my life, but it didn't ruin my life, because there's no way. I refuse to let that happen. So he served, and I'm thinking to myself, well, the scales seem out of whack here to me. Now I feel like I'm the one who's the punisher. It didn't feel right anymore. Like, enough is enough. I wanted him to pay for his crime. I wanted him to serve time. I wanted him to suffer. I wanted pain and suffering for him. And on that call, I learned about his pain and suffering, and it was great and it was vast. I got everything that I wanted. I got everything I asked for. I wanted him to pay. And my God, he has paid. He lost everything. He lost everything. He lost his marriage. He lost his child. He had a 5-month-old baby when this happened. He lost, parental rights. He lost 30 years of his life and all of his relationships. Did he have that coming? Of course he did. Of course he did. But that day I realized he has done his time. When is it enough? There's no purpose anymore for him to be in prison. I don't believe he's a danger to society. I don't believe he would ever do this again. The one thing he couldn't answer was why he did it. When he was asked that question, he would say, he could tell you what he did in great detail. He could tell you the circumstances that led up to it that night, and the fight with his wife and his overreaction to that, his panic, then his turning back to drinking and doing something just incredibly impulsive, but he couldn't answer why he did it. So that was my one thing I said at the end of the call. I got an opportunity to talk, and I shocked everyone, including myself, because I said, I want you to let him out of prison. And the commissioner was absolutely shocked. He was just blown away. And I said, I can't believe I feel this way, but I do. I believe him. I know he's remorseful. It was a terrible thing that he did. I'll never forget it. I don't know if I can forgive it, but I definitely know that I don't feel like that's where he should be. I think he should be home and have whatever little time there is with his mom. He should be able to get out and be with his mother, but he can't get out until he can answer that question. He has to be able to explain why he did what he did. And he doesn't understand why he did it. And the only way he's going to understand that is to go through sex offender treatment. Sex offender treatment is not a joke. You can research this. It actually is really, really good for a certain population of perpetrator, not for all of them, but for those that recognize and acknowledge that what they did was wrong and they take responsibility for what they did, that population can be helped through sex offender training. There's a lot of people in prison that will try to fake it till they make it. And it's unfortunate because they do get short sentences and they get out, they're going to repeat. He was in there for a very, very long time, but he just never had this treatment. So after that call, they moved him. They did finally, a couple months later, move him to another facility and he was able to go through treatment. So there were 4 meetings that I attended. That was the first one. There were 2 more, just kind of touch points along the way because there's always one each like 6 to 9 months. And then eventually there was the last one in 2020. And I kind of knew because I was talking to the commissioners and stuff behind the scenes. I knew that they were going to recommend with my blessing that he be released. And they told me that this was knocking off probably 5 to 7 years of time that they thought he would have still had to serve if I had not intervened. So on that last call, he talked about the sex offender treatment. Again, very apparent how incredibly impactful it was on him. And I would say to you that honestly, it would be a really good service in the community that he's in now if he would be involved with that ongoing as maybe like in a consultant role or maybe a group leader role, because he is such a powerful speaker and so incredibly articulate about a horrible thing. He can talk about it. It's not easy for him, but he can, and he can spot a bullshitter from a mile away. That's one of the things he talked about, was that you could tell immediately on day one which offenders in the group were just there to try to placate the system so that they could get out, and which men were there to really do the work and discover and excavate and face their demons. And that the trainers in the group could also spot those people and they would remove them that weren't there to do the work. And I thought that was good because I too truly believe that he is, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I really believe that David Roberts is a good person. I think he's a good person and he did a really bad thing. And I really believe that a lot of people are capable of horrible behavior. I don't think I have to convince anybody of that. I'm not saying that a lot of people are capable of kidnap and rape, but I think that there are people that do horrendously bad things. And then what happens after that really determines their trajectory in their life. So I will say it a million times. This is my experience. I don't project this on any other person who's been assaulted or had a crime committed against them. You know, their story and their experience is theirs. This was mine. This was a journey that I never saw coming. I never expected that I would be able to forgive him and never made it a goal. So these meetings just brought me into a fold and got me informed in a way that I didn't expect. So listening to him talk about the treatment, after that, I asked him why he raped me, why he did what he did. And his answer was really simple. And I had written this down on paper the first meeting that we had. So that was like 4 meetings ago. I wrote on a notebook, because he could. That's what I wrote, because he could. And on that call, when I asked him why he did it, that final meeting, he said, because I could. And it's really that simple. It is the entitlement, the belief that so many men have, that when they want something, they just take it. So don't think I'm bashing on you guys. There are so many good men in my life and in the world. That's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about rape culture. I'm talking about entitlement culture. I want something, and this carries over into lots of other things, but now we're talking about sexual assault. I wanted something, so I took it. And that's exactly what he verbalized that day. I didn't give a thought to that I shouldn't do this. In my head, I was angry, I was spinning, I was drunk. I was just thinking about what I wanted in the moment. I tried to get the girl, she got away. I went to a convenience store and got myself a soda. I should have cleared my head. I should have been thinking clearly. I should have just gone home, but I didn't, because I didn't want to. I had set my mind on this and I was going to do it. And there you were. You didn't do anything wrong. This has nothing to do with you. You were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I took you and I did with you what I wanted to do with you. And because I could. And it's as simple as that. It's just entitlement. There's no thought process. And this is how it is with all rapists. There's no thought process about that person's well-being, what that's going to do to them. There's zero concern for that. There's only what I want, what the rapist wants. And they're going to take it. They're going to do it. You're not going to change somebody's mind. They're going to do it because they want it, and they don't have a fear of consequences. And there's not a fear of consequences because rape is not taken seriously. It's not. Again, my case is unique, I feel, because I know that a lot of times women who are raped are not believed. They won't even go report it because they know that they're not going to be believed. They're going to be re-victimized. So there's so many women that just, and not just women, by the way, there's marginalized communities too. I mean, men are raped, transgenders are raped, and they're, most of the time, they're definitely not going to go tell anyone because they're going to have a whole nother, battle ahead of them in just trying to get support. So, for me, I know how lucky I was that the police were on my side and believed me and assisted me, cared for me, nurtured me. Same with the court system. I had all of that on my side. But as a society, that's not what it's like. Rape is made light of all the time. I said to you in a text or in the message, that I wanted to talk about rape jokes. You're a comedian. Rape jokes aren't funny ever. They're never funny. There's just there's nothing funny about rape. And I know that sometimes when things are really uncomfortable, we make light of them. I mean, humor has saved my life. I have a dark sense of humor. I love humor. I love your posts. But there's nothing funny about a rape joke. And it's like part of the shit soup that's out there that contributes to this being okay. Does a rape joke do rape jokes make rapists? Of course not. It's like little drops of stuff that come together to make a society so desensitized to how serious this is. I mean, we haven't even talked about the impact, that it has on someone's life. I mean, my life wasn't ruined, but it was highly impacted. And it always will be. There are certain things that trigger me, that send me back throttling 30 years. But I just want people to really, just take a minute, like really think about what you say, what you do, how it's part of the bigger picture. I remember a couple of years ago when people were talking about Pepe Le Pew getting canceled, right? And of course, it's one more thing that people can argue about and be divisive about. I remember looking at that thinking, that's really interesting to me. I've always fucking hated Pepe Le Pew. I remember as a young child thinking, that's gross. Look at, she just wants to get away, And when you watch the little clips, and if you really watch them, you think, yeah, that's pretty uncomfortable. That's, again, it's like this little thing, right? It seems like it's a little thing. And it is a little thing until you stack it up with everything else. I remember that in one of the calls that I was on with the state of Wisconsin and David Roberts, and he was talking about the influence of mass super toxic masculinity and again, entitlement. And he talked about how his dad treated his mom, how his dad treated his sisters. And again, just, when he wanted something, his dad just took it, I mean, literally just took what he wanted, and how he saw that with other men, like in jobs, sexually harassing women at the workplace. He talked a little bit about that. He talked about the movie. He asked me if I had seen the Porky's movies, because we were basically the same age. And I said, yes, I've seen them. And he said, well, there's one, and I don't remember which one it is, but there's a guy asking a girl out on a date and she doesn't want to go. And she says no over and over and over again. And he just badgers her until she agrees to go out with him. And he said, that's the culture that we've grown up in. And again, it's a little snippet, but it's true, coercion. And so I think about all these like little minor things that when they stand alone, they don't seem like a big deal. But when you stack them all together, it's kind of indoctrination from a very young age. That's why I talk about the Pepe Le Pew thing, because those are little kids typically watching those cartoons. And so from a young age, you have girls and boys seeing that. And I guess it starts to shape the way that they think. You can force yourself on someone. You can take what you want. So, and I could go on about Disney movies and how the women are portrayed in Disney movies, helpless, have to be saved, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of cultural stuff. Then you've got music and movies. And I don't live in a box. I mean, I love to see movies. I like all kinds of music. I realize there's all kinds of messages out there. There are certain things we can control and certain things that we can't. And I don't want to regulate or mandate integrity. I don't want to do that. But I think that there are things that we can pay attention to and things that we can kind of put a stop to. And so when I see comedians joking about roofies and joking about rape, I wonder if they've ever known anybody. It's one of the things that crosses my mind, is have they ever really known anyone who's been raped, and do they know the impact? And if they really did, would they maybe do some self-reflection and think, ask myself, what's funny about that joke? Do you know where I'm coming from?
I do. I have two thoughts. I'll tell you first, very quick. I don't know what this says about me, but going all the way back to the question, why did you do this? The thought that popped into my head was because he could. Like, I got to the answer before you even revealed it. And
Yeah.
so when you did, I'm like, yeah, that's the answer.
Yeah.
But the other thought is a story. This goes back many years in my career. I'm an opening act at this point. And I'm not going to go into details because I could. I mean, I remember where I was in the club. I remember the club. I remember where the headlining, the comic that's above me is on stage. And on Friday, he tells a rape joke, and I'm in the back of the room going, ooh, You know, like
Mhm.
it just, like you said, they're not fun. I'm not here to police anybody, but they rubbed me the wrong way for the most part.
Mhm.
But his really rubbed me the wrong way. I did not like it. And so Saturday comes around and there's a bachelorette party in the audience. And I do my set. It goes well. I get off stage. He gets on stage. And at some point, he starts his rape joke. And I notice all the girls from the bachelorette party getting up and rushing to the bride, the one that's decked out with penises everywhere. You know who she is.
Oh.
And I sort of make my way around so that I can see her, and tears are running down her face.
Mm.
And they're comforting her, and I don't remember if the comedian is oblivious, but he keeps going. The long and the short of it is, I she had been raped, and he set her off, and she was reliving it and just sobbing. And I don't remember my actions. I just remember moving in and talking to one of the bachelors, like, is there anything I can do? And she was a sweetheart. She's like, no, you were great. She told me what happened. This asshole on stage is telling this joke that, as I said, I didn't find funny.
Mhm.
And they got her out of there. And yeah, I mean, that was a defining moment in my career, if you will, where I had never written a rape joke, but
Mhm.
witnessing that, I'm like, I don't think I ever will. Not that I was trying to brew one up, but
Right.
I remember so vividly this woman going to a comedy club to laugh, to celebrate
Yep.
her impending doom. Sorry, her marriage. Um,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. And
instead of
instead she
laughter, she's
experiences a
remembering
piece
the
of
worst life
trauma
of her,
instead.
yeah, worst night of her life. And just the thing I can't get over, as I said, the tears running down her face. I mean,
Yeah.
there are movie tears where you're like a single tear, and then there's real tears where your nose clogs up and you're snorting because you can't
Yeah.
breathe,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's not pretty. And it's just,
Right.
I remember having the thought, I never want to do anything like that to someone while I am on stage. And
Hmm.
I know I have dark humor, and I know well, I take that back. I don't think I push boundaries. I talk about things that are interesting to me. Some people call them
Hmm.
dark, some people call them sarcastic. But I just remember having the thought, I never want to do so. People are here to laugh. I
Hmm.
never want to cause anyone pain while I'm on stage. And I think there's a way of doing that. And
Oh, I do too. I do too. I think that it's interesting because you asked the question about survivor and victim. That's why I say it kind of swings, right? It's situational. I mean, overall, I consider myself a survivor, but I feel re-victimized at times. It's a popular word these days, triggered for
yeah,
people to get
well,
triggered.
victim is a
But
popular word as well.
yeah, yeah. Um, but we do get, of course, anybody who's been through an assault does get triggered. For me, it has to do with feelings of worthlessness and shame. And uh I think it just dug so much when I was assaulted, when that happened to me, it was all about getting through it, surviving, and then getting on the other side of it. And then when that happened, when I got through it, almost immediately, this is why I talk about how, I mean, I was super tired. I wanted to go to sleep, but it was more than that. I wanted to escape reality. After I got my shower and then I had to tell my family what happened. It made phone calls that were just horrifying to make. And then I just wanted to unplug. I won't say that I really wanted to die. That came later. A lot of suicidal thoughts came later. But in the immediate aftermath of the assault, I just didn't want to be. I didn't want to be dead, but I didn't want to be alive either. It was like, what can I do to not have to think or feel anything right now? Because the thoughts were so awful. And one of the main things I kept thinking of is, I am worthless. I mean, that somebody would do this to me obviously means that I have no worth, that someone could just pick me up off the street and do what they did to me and just discard me. That this I made it all about me, not about him. It was in my head. I am so not, I have no worth, that I could just be treated like a literal object and piece of garbage. And used like that, just used, and then discarded. And that's what stuck with me. I could not get that out of my head for years. I carried that baggage around with me. Because before that night, I was incredibly confident. I was on top of the world. I was in college and I had an awesome boyfriend, and we were normal 21 and 23-year-old people. We were passionate and we were active, and I had a great job, and just like you're on top of the world at that age. I had everything ahead of me, and our relationship, we were only a little over a year into our relationship, and things were so great. And then this horrifying thing happened. And I'll tell you what, my life changed immediately. It was like, and that's like when I talk about people joking around about rape or making light of rape, or just not even paying enough attention to how serious of a problem it is. um, I think that's, I guess, what brings that back up and makes me feel that way sometimes is, why isn't anybody taking this seriously? We're just treated like garbage, and it's a terrible thing. I don't feel that way all the time, but that has stuck with me for many, many years, that's how what it feels like. Like you just have, you can be treated that way because you're not worth anything. That's a societal problem, that we don't value women enough to really make this topic, a major topic, something that really, really has to be dealt with. Meaning, like, what am I looking for? I'm looking for the court system to give every rapist a 65-year sentence or a 100-year sentence. None of this small stuff. They should all get that sentence, but they should have opportunities while they're incarcerated to do the work that needs to get done. Those that aren't willing to do the work or can't do the work because they are actual monsters, they can stay in prison forever. Shoot, give them put them to sleep. I don't care. We shouldn't have to share air with them at all. And there's a fair number of those predators. What's that?
I said, that's my stance.
Yeah. I have no time for anybody who can't be accountable for what they've done and aren't willing to delve in and figure out why their behavior is what it is. If David Roberts gave me any indication that he was still capable of the behavior that he was, I would have said, just leave him in there. In fact, I would have been going to every hearing, participating as loudly as I could to advocate for him to stay in prison. But I believe that there are people that are capable of changing and that are capable of being identified and defined by more than just that one thing. And that's what I believe in this case. I can't say that about any other case. I wouldn't know the details, but that's how I feel about this. And I don't know. I feel like it's such a serious topic, but it doesn't get a lot of attention. I mean, you see a story when it happens, and then that it's gone, and there's really no follow through on society to try to encourage more look at. I feel like with a problem, someone asked me one time why I was, or how I was willing to even talk with him, because even though they told me I wasn't allowed to talk to him, I did talk to him. They allowed it. We went back and forth, and we actually conversed with each other on 2 of the phone calls. And I guess for me, I think about it like, if you are studying drugs and alcohol, like, you could take almost any subject, but let's say you're studying drugs and alcohol and you want to know why someone turns to drugs and alcohol. You're going to go talk to people who do that. You're going to talk to people who go through regular stressors and they don't turn to that. So you're going to find out how they're able to cope in other ways. But you're certainly going to go talk to the people who struggle with drugs and alcohol and see what the motivators are. And you're going to study both sides. So I look at it the same way with sexual assault. It's not going to do you any good to only talk to the good guys, right? It's not going to do you any good to talk to guys who've never done it. You can talk to them and they can explain to you why they respect women and why they would never do something like that. And you can find out about their backgrounds and what's contributed to how they behave and how they think. But if you really want to stop sexual assault, you better go talk to the rapists and find out why they're doing it. Like you have to find that out. And if you find some that are actually willing to really sit down and get into the nitty gritty and tell you what contributed to their thought process and their behavior, that's who you need to pay attention to, because that's the only way we can turn around and raise our sons in a different way. You know, you've got a little boy. I love all your Truman posts. You know, I mean, your behavior, he's gonna obviously mirror. He's going to hear what you have to say, and you're going to have a big impact on him. It's the same way in our household. You know, our son is 21, almost 22. From a very young age, we were very open with him about body parts, right? We called them by their actual names. It was sillier later, you know, when you got into, you know, older, then some of the other stuff came into play. But bodily functions, body parts, everything was very open. He knew about menstruation. He knew where babies came from a very early age. He knew
I'm still lost on those last two. What is menstruation and where do babies come from?
oh yeah, that's a whole nother podcast.
Well, if I
But you
could
know, he's well
recommend,
educated.
if I could
Mhm.
recommend to anybody watching this point or listening, there's a book by John Krakauer called Missoula, which you're nodding. Have you read it? Are you familiar?
I haven't.
It phenomenal, depressing. This is the subject matter, and he
Oh,
goes into detail, and um yeah, I'll leave it there because just
okay.
John Krakauer, Missoula, because I was going to say something
Well, I'll pick
unfortunately
it up.
self-promotional, and I didn't want to do that.
Oh.
His book
Well,
inspired
I'll
me
pick that up.
while I was
Well,
working on something. While I was working on something, his book inspired me. That's what I'll leave it as. But
okay.
so, I guess parting thoughts. The whole point of me bringing this up in a way is, as I said, Barrett and I talk about irredeemability. By the way, Barrett, shut up. You've talked so much this podcast.
I'm sorry, Barrett.
Um,
That's fine.
and the idea that no one is irredeemable, and we look at these Facebook posts or these people that vote a certain way, and I have friends on the left that say, "Fuck them, they're voting to take away my rights," and I'm like, "Yeah, I can understand your anger. I see it. I hate it." You don't change anybody by dismissing them and saying, "Fuck them."
Right.
Like, I still talk to my stupid high school friends, not believing I will change them. And I don't think they talk to me thinking they'll change me. Like, maybe they sit there and go, "Ooh, maybe Nathan will have a traumatic brain injury and then he'll be dumb like me too." I don't know. Um, but lack of dialogue does nothing. Dialogue
Yeah.
helps. Lack of dialogue does nothing. And yeah, as you've proven, almost no one is irredeemable. There is irredeemable out there, but man, for you to find it in your life and experience, I got nothing. I don't know that I could be there. I don't know that I could project myself into that situation and say, "Oh, I could see myself being forgiving." I all praise upon you and
Uh,
your journey, your who you are as a person for what you took away from your experience.
mhm.
I don't say this lightly, but much better person than I think I could ever be. So
You can surprise yourself, you know. I mean, this, like I said, this was never a goal of mine, and I thank you for the compliments. But you know, I definitely, you know, my goal is not praise, it's more about education. You know, I feel like for me, having not been looking for it, when I did finally forgive him, which I did, um I did it because I truly felt that way, right? I didn't A lot of people say, "Oh, you know, when you forgive someone, you'll feel so much better. It'll just, you know." I'm thinking, "Okay, well, I can't do it if I don't really mean it." You know, I it's as much for him as it is for me. When I forgave him, I wanted him to take it to heart and know that I believe in him and I want him to have a good life. I want him to have a life that's productive. I want him to have a life that has love. I feel that he deserves that. He has earned that. Um, I feel that he definitely paid his debt and he served his time, and he paid in spades when it came to pain and suffering, and then it just became cruel. So I want that for him. I do forgive him for what he did. I will never forget. I will never say you have a past. It's okay that you did that. It's not okay. And I made that abundantly clear to him. But I have forgiven, but I don't ever want anybody else to think that I'm saying this or telling the story because that's what they should do. I hate it when people should all over each other. You do whatever feels right for you. I know people who've been in my situation that they want nothing to do with the perpetrator. They want no contact. And I completely respect that. It's like you move on with your life and you go on. For me, my next thing is that I'm gonna sit down with him. It'll be in a controlled environment, um, but uh, but I'm gonna do that. I want to sit down. I've been writing, and I just kind of want to. I feel like it's like the next and hopefully last step for me in my process. So, but people deserve. There are people that deserve redemption. That's my belief.
Barrett, thoughts?
It seems like one of the things, some of the things that you said really reflect the same idea, which is as humans, we somehow we do this thing where we dehumanize the other, right? Like when it
Yes.
comes to women in rape culture, well, women aren't humans, they're women. So you take what you want and do what you want and make them do what is right for you because they are not humans. They're here to be, they're extras in your movie that are here to serve your function, kind of,
Mhm.
right? But in a way, like for the years in between 91 and 2018, there's this version of him in your head that
Mhm.
was that might have been correct when it started, right?
Right.
But then
Right.
over the years, it was no longer correct, but it hadn't, like your opinion, your knowledge of him hadn't evolved with all the other things that evolved in your life. You know what I mean? Not that you had any reason to know that because you didn't know, but when you had a conversation with him and you use these words, you saw him as a human being all of a sudden, not
Right.
just as this boogeyman or this
Yes.
monster. He was actually a human being. And it's like, right, it seems to always come down to that. Not always, but often it comes down to, do we see women as human? Right?
Hmm.
Are women actually part of the human race? Right?
Right.
Are people who you said, here's a guy who did a really bad thing. Now, maybe he was a really bad guy when he was 23, but by all accounts, he was a troubled guy more than a bad guy. But he
Hmm.
did a really bad thing, and while he definitely needs to be held accountable for that, there is a point. Is he no longer a human because he
Hmm.
did something inhumane, right? Like in
Right.
there's that weird thing, right? Like, and I wonder if without any of the treatment and things like that, if you talked to him when he was 26 and you could have determined how the rest of his life would have gone, he might not have even been at that place yet. He might have been at a
Hmm.
place where, like, it was my wife's fault. She made me mad, and then I went out and got drunk, and then this happened, and it's all her fault because she started this fight. I don't know what he would have said, but you know what I mean? Something like that.
Right.
It's like, right, like, time has a way of, like, calcifying, eroding, and softening in
Yeah.
different areas of our lives. Like some areas calcify, and we just
Hmm.
double down. There is a Santa Claus, and the Earth is flat. You know what I mean? And then other things kind of erode. Like these other things, like I used to kind of believe this. I don't know. Like you said about the anger, you don't necessarily know when it disappeared. It
Hmm.
just kind of little by little eroded over time. It just kind of other things replaced it, right?
Right.
Your husband, your child, your life, your friends, your other things. Just there was no room for all this other positive stuff in your life if all this other stuff was taking up that bandwidth. So it just got edged out over 30 years. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And that's another thing. And then other things just soften. Like, well, yeah, I used to believe that. Now I'm not sure what I believe. Right.
Yeah.
And it's like we don't always get to pick and choose which things harden, which things disappear, and which things soften. But in this case, he had to make a conscious choice, largely through therapy, right? He was forced to make a choice, but it was still a choice. Like, he had to make the choice to say, I want to be different, right? And that is something that humans can do. And so I guess the question is like, it is a
I apologize, but
Mhm.
did he want, I'm this is just the isolated case here, but did he want to be different, or did he realize that that one act was not who he was, as he wasn't a serial offender? I mean, because that could have set him down the path. Who knows? Maybe that would have, I liked that,
I
and
mean,
maybe by 26 he would have had 10 victims. I mean, who knows? It just
Right.
my,
Well, it's really hard to say. It's really
yeah.
hard to say. I think a lot about had there, had I gotten involved earlier, it would have been a different experience. I know that my maturity and his maturity has so much time has passed, has a lot to do with it. I don't know what it was like for him in the first few years that he was in jail and in prison. I don't know what his thought process back then. And he probably very well could have been combative, might have been blaming other people. I don't know because I wasn't part of it, and I don't know if those questions were asked of him in hearings that I didn't attend. I only know that that back when it happened, and I just didn't want to see it. I didn't back then. I didn't want to see it, and I certainly didn't want to hear any defense of him. That any character witnesses that did come forward for him, people were literally shocked that he was capable of doing what he did, especially his employers. He was a young man, but he was, being promoted at work, and, just everybody that kind of knew him, no one could believe that he had gone and done something like this. But I didn't want to hear that back then. I didn't want to hear it. I'm just like, he's a monster.
and you
And he
shouldn't have
was. I
been
mean, to
forced to
me,
hear it.
yeah.
You shouldn't force someone in a moment to, you shouldn't force anything upon them. Like, oh yeah, he did this bad thing, but he's not a bad guy. Well,
Right, exactly. I wasn't in the frame of mind to hear it, but
yeah,
those kind of
and
things
you
come
shouldn't have
up in
been.
court, that's what happens in court. But yeah, anyhow, the process has been it's just been an interesting process, and I think that Baird has definitely hit on it is definitely the way you described it, is that we do dehumanize people when awful things are happening, right? It's just, we just can't believe that a real sane human person is capable of some of the behavior of like serial killers and stuff. It's just shocking. Pedophiles, it's just like, how can you be so disconnected that you can do the things that they're capable of doing? And that's what I struggled with, was how could he do that to me? Like, what kind of person could do that? And I just couldn't believe that a person, a human being, would do it. So it's just easier to call him a monster. And his behavior was monstrous. And but a lot of time has gone by, and I believe that he is a completely different person. I truly believe that. I believe in him, and I hope I'm never proven wrong. That would be a very difficult thing for me to handle. So.
Well, final question, and this is as we wrap things up, usually where we talk about, Barrett's music, my books, my comedy. Do you have anything like, and this is off the top of my head because we didn't discuss it beforehand. Are you just barfing out of me educational or motivational speaking? Because I fucking think you're there. Like, I think you could stand in front of a group and be extremely motivational, extremely educational, therapeutic. Is that anything you've looked into or thought about? Because that's what I would be promoting right now is Sheri does this.
No. So no, I don't do anything like that. I did one other podcast for victim services in Orlando. That I had been tipped off about them, and they called me, and so I did a thing about forgiveness with them.
Well, I
I
hope
don't
this is
do
the tip
anything
of the
else.
iceberg then, because
Yeah.
I think depending on how comfortable you seem, very comfortable telling it. I think this could be something you would be excellent at, and as I said,
appreciate that.
therapeutic for others and educational, any Yeah.
Well, I started writing. That's why I started going back actually to Wisconsin a couple years ago. I started taking some breaks and so that I could really unplug. I have an incredibly demanding job. I own a travel agency, and right now I'm working like 60, 70 hours a week, which is
Oh,
totally insane.
my
So I don't
family
have a
was
whole
just
lot
in
of time.
Disney in
But
March. Why
I
didn't we go
started
through you?
I carved out, days where that was it. I unplugged. I went up there and I just wrote and wrote and wrote. I also read a book while I was there that I had on my nightstand for about 5 years, and I just couldn't find the strength to do it. And I finally did it in Wisconsin. There's a
Was
book
it my
called
book? Oh,
South of
wait.
Forgiveness.
My
It's
book
called
wasn't out 5 years ago.
no. No, there's a book called South of Forgiveness. And I recommend that. I can't remember the name of the woman who wrote it, but it is a woman wrote a book, co-wrote a book with her rapist, believe it or not.
Wow. All right. Did not
Yes,
see that coming.
different circumstances, but an interesting book. So I read that, and that was really motivating for me. So I've been writing for a while, trying to put something together. We'll see if that comes together. But otherwise, one of my biggest goals is if I can get my business under control, which is a little hard to do right now. There is a victim of rape. What do I want to say? It's like sexual assault center here in my town. And I would just like to have time to be able to volunteer there. I've never done anything like that. And when I was in college, I was in a speakers group. But that was a long time ago. That was in the 90s. And I haven't done anything with this like part of my life in a really long time until I did that podcast and this one. And it is motivating and it's confidence building, I would say that. So thank
Well,
you.
and yeah, and you can't, it's like forgiveness. You can't do anything until you're ready. It has to be organic. And if you are finding your voice now, then this is when it was meant to happen. So
Mhm.
thank you for coming on here and sharing
Yeah.
your story and life and
Thanks for having
everything.
me. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Well,
Yeah.
this is awkward, but we'll do it. Barrett can be found at antargoodwin.com. Do you want us to share a Twitter handle or anything for you, or please go ahead with anything. If people want to find you, reach out to you.
Oh, I guess they can look for me on Facebook.
There you go.
That's it. Yeah.
Antargoodwin.com. He's the musical director for the Katie Henry Band. I stole the picture you posted the other day, so I'm going to throw the graphic up right now for anybody watching, which shows the upcoming dates. You have a whole slew of them, so we're not even going to try and promote one of them. Earlier, when I caught myself, John Krakauer's Missoula did inspire me for one of the moments in my book, We Are 100, the thriller I wrote where bad people do bad things to worse people. And one of the people that gets taken out did something horrible to a woman, I believe. Well, actually it was the prosecutor. Either way, I was inspired by that. So my book, We Are 100, is available on audio, Kindle, paperback, hardcover, Amazon, Audible, Google Play, whatever. And I can be found at nathantimmel.com. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And oh, by the way, trigger warning. The things you just heard could have been triggering had I said that up front, but I didn't. Bye.